Hi, my name is Walter Hoye, and this is my wife, Lori, and together we make up the leadership for the Issues for Life Foundation.
The Issues for Life Foundation works with Black leaders nationwide to strengthen their stand against abortion on demand. You may be wondering, how did you get into this?
Well, I'm glad you asked. It all started in 2007 when I was standing outside of an abortion clinic in Oakland, California. I was holding this sign right here. The sign reads, "God loves you and your baby, let us help you." It was an amazing occurrence that this was the exact questions I would receive while standing on a public sidewalk. The women literally walking into the clinic would stop and say, "Preacher," because they recognized me as a pastor from the pulpit, and they'd ask me, "Is it true that God loves me?" And I said, "Yes, it's true, God loves you." And then she'd look at me and she'd say, "Well, preacher, if it's true that God loves me, then does he love my baby?" And I said, "Oh yeah, it's true that God loves you and your baby." And then she would look down and she'd look back up and she'd say, "Well, one more time, preacher, if it's true that God loves me, and if it's true that God loves my baby, will you help me?" Oh, she's getting right down to it now. As it turns out, we did. I was part of a church ministry. We were standing outside of an abortion clinic, and it was myself and two senior women with me from my church, and they were in their 80s. And so when the sisters walked up to me and asked me the question, "Is it true that God loves me? And is it true that God loves me and my baby? And if all that's true, will you help me?" We did. It didn't really matter what she needed. If she needed groceries, we bought them. If she needed a place to stay, sometimes she just wanted some time all to herself, we got that for her. It really didn't matter what she needed. The best assignment for me, however, was when she asked me, "Well, will you help me talk to my boyfriend?" Yeah, I really liked that assignment. I had no problem doing that and look forward to it. But as it turns out, holding this sign on a public sidewalk right outside of an abortion clinic was an issue for the abortion clinic. And eventually, it led to a whole lot of trouble.
Oh yeah. In January of 2008, on MLK's 79th birthday, January 15, 2008, the city of Oakland decided that standing on a public sidewalk, holding a sign, handing out literature, and offering women help to choose life was criminalized. And it was only criminalized for life. If you didn't want to choose life, you could continue receiving your First Amendment rights. But the city of Oakland passed an ordinance, a bubble ordinance, that required you to be 8 feet away from a woman. Once you were within 100 feet of an abortion clinic, you could not get closer than 8 feet without express permission, which is kind of crazy to get permission from 8 feet away. But the women kept coming, and the women kept walking up to Walter to receive the help because they believed the sign. God loves them, God loves their baby, and they wanted to get help to not go in that clinic. And that just became too much for the city of Oakland.
Literally, holding the sign that says God loves you and your baby attracted the attention. But let me tell you how that got started. I was sitting in my church and I got a phone call from some pro-life counselors that were already out there. They said the sisters aren't talking to us. They'd walk up and walk right by and wouldn't say a word. And so they thought that it would be harder for a woman walking into an abortion clinic to walk by somebody she recognized in the pulpit. They thought it would be hard for her to walk by her pastor, walk by her priest, walk by her elder, walk by her deacon. And as a result, she'd have to stop and talk about it. Well, as it turns out, they were right. As I was standing out there, the women would recognize me as a preacher in the pulpit, and they literally say, "Hey, preacher, will you help me?" And when they asked me to help them, I did. The first thing they said, though, was, "Is it true that God loves me?" Now, you got to get this. She recognizes me from a preacher in the pulpit. She's a Christian. She goes to church. She's already heard me preach. She knows I'm preaching in the pulpit. She knows I'm pastoring in my church. And yes, she's asking me, is it true that God loves me? Well, that's a message for us today, because sometimes we don't talk about this nearly enough in our churches. And if you go deep into our church, you'll find out there are some churches in our community, particularly the Black American community, where we don't talk about this issue at all. And so oftentimes, the sister right in front of the abortion clinic with the baby's only got a few minutes left to live, she's literally wondering, does God love me? Then the next thing she'd say, well, if it's true that God loves me, does he love my baby? For her, it was always a baby. For mama, it was a baby. For her, it wasn't fetal tissue. It wasn't a clump of cells. It was her baby. It was her baby boy, her baby girl. It was her baby. And she wanted to know not only did God love her, oh my goodness, that should be 101 in every church in America, but she wanted to know that, and she wanted to know that if God loved her, did he love her baby? She was concerned about her baby. Now, one of the sisters that walked up to me really wanted to get an abortion. They really wanted some help. So after we'd answer those questions, is it true that God loves me? I say yes. She'd ask me again, if he loves me, does he love my baby? I say yes, God loves you and your baby, and we'd settle that. Well, then she'd get right down to it. And this is a message for us today. She'd say, well, if it's true, if all that's true, if God loves me, if God loves my baby, and you're a preacher, will you help me? And oh my goodness, that's when it started. I would begin to help her. And again, it didn't matter. It could be groceries. It could be a place to stay. Sometimes she needed a doctor or a nurse. She needed prenatal care. And on speed dial, I had a pregnancy care center ready for my call, and I could get her to a doctor, a nurse, prenatal care. Sometimes she just wanted to talk to another sister that was in the same condition, same predicament. Oh my goodness, all these things were right at my fingertips. And having two senior women with me on a public sidewalk, that was instrumental. That gave them the condition they wanted. That gave them the comfort they needed to really sit and stand with me, rather, and have that conversation. I want to say this because it's important for us to realize that this is something that men and women have to do together. And oh my goodness, I want to get the message across that in our churches, we need to talk about this issue. We need to specifically address the biblical model regarding life and the issue. So there isn't the question of whether God loves me or not. Oh yes, she's in church, she knows that. It's no longer a question, does God love me or my baby? It's a baby. It's a baby from the earliest biological connection. When that sperm meets the egg, at that point, the image of life is created by God, and by God, that image of life is in a mother's womb. And so from that very moment of conception, it's a life. It's an image created by God. It's a baby. It's a person that needs to be protected by both love and by law. But oh my goodness, you would have thought that this conversation wasn't really necessary, and you would have thought that as long as we were actually helping women on a public sidewalk, that wouldn't be a problem. But that wasn't the case, was it?
No, it wasn't. That help became an issue. On one Tuesday, and Walter was on the sidewalk 1 day a week, 2 hours a day. And on one Tuesday, there were actually 27 women lined up to get help. And they were literally lined up to get help, because there's no way the abortion clinic could do 27 abortions in a 2-hour window. And these sisters stood in line and waited one by one to get assistance from Walter. And that was too much for the abortion clinic. So, since they had the ordinance on the books already, on May 13th, 2008, Oakland police came out to the clinic and arrested Walter for standing on the sidewalk, holding a sign, handing out literature, having a conversation, and helping women to choose life.
My goodness. I never would have guessed in a million years that standing on a public sidewalk, holding a sign that says, God loves you and your baby, let us help you. Literally helping women on a public sidewalk. I never thought that that would ever come into question. But let me tell you, that was a real problem for the abortion clinic. And what they did, they took a page from Daniel. You know, Daniel was guilty of nothing but praying. And in order to get Daniel, in order to stop Daniel, they had to make praying illegal. Oh, my goodness. Can you imagine, in the city of Oakland, they literally made standing on a public sidewalk, holding a sign that says, God loves you and your baby, let us help you, literally helping women illegal. Oh, and when this all got started, I really had no idea it would lead to this. Oh my goodness, in 2009, on January 15th, 2009, on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, I was convicted. Not only was I convicted, but I was incarcerated. During the time that I was in court, I was facing 4 years in jail. Can you believe that? 4 years in jail for standing on a public sidewalk, holding up a sign that says, God loves you and your baby, let us help you, and literally helping the women on a public sidewalk. You wouldn't believe it, but even when the police came, they didn't want to do anything with me. They thought that this was the least of the problems in the city of Oakland. And the women, oh my goodness, they kept coming because they wanted to get the help. But for the abortion clinic, this was a big, big problem. So ultimately, I was convicted on MLK's birthday. Ultimately, I was incarcerated. Oh my goodness. And I had to face the consequences for being on a public sidewalk, holding up a sign that read, God loves you and your baby, let us help you. But let me backtrack a minute. While I'm in court, I really can't believe this. And so I'm waiting to see, well, what evidence do they really have? What crime am I really, really guilty of? And do you know, in court, there wasn't one woman complaining. Not one, because all the women were getting help. The women didn't have any problem with me being there. It was just the executive director of the abortion clinic itself. And she got up. This is the only testimony against me in court. She got up in court, and you know what? Her testimony was a lie. And we proved that with videotape evidence. I have videotape because there was one particular day I was out there, and I had decided that I wanted to recruit more members from my church. In order to recruit more members from my church, I wanted to put together a video so they could see exactly what it was like while being out there on the public sidewalk. While I was out there, the abortion clinic was trying everything. First, they just kept calling the police, but the police said they had better things to do. They'd come, but they really didn't even want to come. They didn't like to come. And so they would talk to me for a little bit. Then they would go and talk to the abortion clinic, and then they would leave. They really hated to come. Then the abortion clinic stepped it up and brought in what we call death scores. These are actually volunteers for the abortion clinic. And they're wearing orange-clad vests. And as the women would walk up, they would walk up to women and say, hey, you don't want to talk to him. You want to come straight into the abortion clinic. But the sisters don't know who they are. And they saw my sign, God loves you and your baby, let us help you. And they wanted to talk to me. And they did. And we had our conversation right with the abortion clinic escort standing right there in the middle, in some cases, literally trying to interrupt the conversation. But they couldn't do that. And so when that wasn't working, that's when they created a law, literally making standing on a public sidewalk, holding up a sign, passing out literature illegal in the city of Oakland. And when I heard the abortion clinic director's testimony, the only testimony in court against me, that's when I decided, oh my goodness, she just lied. And we got videotape evidence of her being out there on that very day. You know, I don't know how to explain how the videotape happened on the exact same day she would come out there, but that's a God thing. God was looking out for me. And while I didn't know that I would need it, I sure did need it when I was in court. We tried to introduce the videotape evidence, but you know, even the court didn't want to hear it. Eventually, we had to argue for about 30 minutes before we finally decided, before the court finally decided to allow the evidence, the videotape evidence. Do you know, they basically allowed the videotape evidence because the jury was getting restless. They were getting restless. They wanted to know, well, let's see what happened. And so instead of risking losing the jury, they said, hey, play the videotape, but only play the videotape portion that applied to her testimony. What we did, we brought her back to the stand, the executive director. We said, click. Is this what you're talking about? She said, no, that's not it. We said, are you sure? She said, no, that's me, but that's not it. I said, okay, this is when you came out the second time. Bam, click. We played it. She said, oh, no, that's not it. We said, are you sure? She says, yeah. I came out again. We said, okay, Your Honor, we're going to have to now play the whole day to see whether she came out again or not. Sure enough, we said click, played it, played the entire videotape for the entire time I was out there. She never came out again. With videotape evidence, we impeached her testimony. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm facing 4 years in jail, but now, case is gonna be dismissed. There's no way. This is the only testimony against me, and we just impeached this testimony with videotape evidence. I'm thinking I'm good now, no problem. But you know what? I was gonna go to jail no matter what. And ultimately I did. You know, the judge allowed the videotape impeached testimony of the executive director of the abortion clinic to stand. He even allowed the lawyer from the city of Oakland, the city attorney, to use this testimony in his closing arguments. And oh my goodness, and the instructions the judge gave the jury, that was just sad. That was just sad. Ultimately, it led to my conviction. But there was one good thing that did happen with the videotape evidence. Remember, I said I was facing 4 years, and I was. And that's when we decided, oh my goodness, we really do need to introduce this videotape evidence. And we did, and we impeached the only testimony against me. Now the courtroom is packed. Everybody's there. All the media is there. It's packed. But when they saw the videotape and they realized that, oh my goodness, it wasn't the abortion clinic's rights that were being violated, it was my rights that were being violated. The videotape evidence also showed how the abortion clinic escorts were following me around. You got to get this. A black preacher standing on a public sidewalk holding a sign that says, God loves you and your baby, let us help you, was being followed by 2, 3, sometimes 4 white women trying to block him, trying to block his sign and his message. You got to get the picture. I'm in the city of Oakland, a black preacher walking on a public sidewalk, and wherever I go, there are white women following me. Let me tell you, we were stopping traffic. It got the attention of everybody. And when the media and everybody in the courtroom, including the jury, when they all saw the videotape evidence, oh my goodness, it became really, really evident that I was going to have to go to jail no matter what, and I wasn't the monster that they had heard that I was. Oh my goodness. But did the videotape matter? No. But it did do this. They reduced my sentence ultimately from 4 years to 30 days. And then they asked me, did I want to take the deal?
Wow. And the answer to that question was no. No backdoor deals, no under the table, no the backdoor deal, admit you're guilty, we'll put you on probation, no jail time. And the answer to that was no, because we're not guilty, they're guilty. We really, for the first time in our lives, experienced what we've been told is the abortion distortion, which even though the facts presented show that you're innocent, show that you've done anything wrong, but because it's the abortion industry and because they cannot have a black preacher on the sidewalk helping women, you have to go to jail. And it doesn't matter what rights are violated. And that's exactly what they did. So Walter was sentenced to 30 days. And when he left the courtroom, the pro-lifers were in tears. Our one great friend, Mary Arnold, said, "We love you, Walter." And he walked through that door with the bailiff, and it was pretty amazing.
My goodness, I had never been in jail before. It was literally my first time. I was stunned. And when they pronounced me guilty, I really couldn't believe it. I thought I was in America. I thought I was in a city in the state of California, in America. I didn't think that it was possible that despite videotape evidence, I would be found guilty. But I was. But oh my goodness, it didn't stop there. After he pronounced the sentence, he finally gave me an opportunity to actually speak. And for the first time in my trial, I did. I really didn't have to say much during the trial. Videotape evidence explained everything. You could see everything. It was clear. It was very clear what had actually happened. And so for the first time, I'm going to get a chance to actually speak on my behalf. And I did. But now, catch this was after he had already sentenced me to jail for 30 days, thinking that, well, you know, after the videotape, we'll just sort of reduce it from 4 years to 30 days, make us look better. Oh, but it didn't. When I got a chance to speak, I stood up and said, you know what? An unjust law is no law at all. And when I come back, as soon as I get out, I'm coming right back to that abortion clinic, right back to that sidewalk. I'm going to be holding my sign that says, God loves you and your baby, let us help you. And we're going to continue to help the women. My goodness, as soon as I said that, the courtroom just exploded. You got to understand, half the courtroom is on the pro-abortion side of the fence. The other half was on the pro-life side of the fence, and it just exploded. It took the bailiffs some time to actually calm everybody down. When the judge heard that, the judge said, hey, wait a minute. He wanted to sentence me back to the 4 years instead of 30 days, but he had already sentenced me to 30 days. So, you know, he called the meeting and both lawyers went up to the bench and they talked about it, and oh my goodness, the Oakland City Attorney wasn't willing to go any further than he did. Oh my goodness, the city attorney from Oakland said, nope. My lawyer said, nope, he's already been sentenced. You can't sentence him a second time now. But the judge was determined to do that. And do you know what? The judge literally scheduled me for a second sentencing.
It was crazy, a second sentencing. But the Lord prevailed. And there was no change to the sentence. It was 30 days, and Walter did his 30 days in jail, which was a whole nother set of, I would say, miracles and interventions on God's behalf. God used Walter to witness to several men in jail. We got the pro-life message into prison. They were doing prayer at midnight like Paul and Silas, and rebuking the demons and just opening eyes of men who are incarcerated, who have been impacted by abortion, and who have not heard the pro-life side of the issue. And it was a stressful time, but yet it was an eventful time. Being in jail and being outside of jail, getting into jail was even a whole nother experience that we could do later.
Oh my goodness. While I'm in jail, my wife is visiting me. I'm getting cards and letters from across the nation. When it comes time to bring the mail in, mail that came to me was coming inside of a bag all by itself. And so I was getting all kind of attention. One day, one of the inmates in jail said, hey, Walter, you know, hey, preacher, we see that, you know, your wife comes all the time, you always got visitors, and your wife comes. And I'm saying, yeah, she comes every chance she gets. I see her every time she's there. And you know what he said to me? My fellow inmate said, you know what? It seems to me that it's better to have a wife than a girlfriend. Oh, my goodness. You know, we had a great conversation right then and there about men marrying wives, about men protecting and providing for their wives and their families. God used my time in jail in an amazing way to communicate his message. Oh my goodness, the time I was in jail was spent doing God's work. And I wanted to make sure we communicate that here, because it was an amazing time that allowed me to do the kind of work that I would have never been able to do otherwise. My goodness. But how was I holding on? Well, was I struggling anyway? Well, yeah, I was. I didn't like being in jail, and there were times when I didn't want to be in jail. I wasn't even getting much sleep while I was there.
Yeah, that's true. Walter was looking a little bit worn, but bottom line, that's not how the story ended. When Walter got out of jail, the Lord gave us a victory in, of all places, the Ninth Circuit.
Yeah.
And that was amazing, where you have justices who are upset that they can't see Walter on the sidewalk. Our lawyer presented a photograph, and all you could see was the top of his hat. They couldn't even see him at all. And the justice was outraged, and he said, literally, "We agree with Hoye." And Walter's conviction was overturned. His sentence, I guess, was expunged, and so he didn't lose any of his rights that he would have lost by being in the justice system. God gave us a tremendous victory in the Ninth Circuit over the forces of evil, and Walter was free.
My goodness, my time in jail was important. My time in jail actually helped me understand more about God and about His will. But what I want to leave you with this is the message I want to leave you with after every show, after every episode on our show. And that is, because
Without life, nothing matters.
Order your copy of this program from the GLC bookstore by calling the numbers or visiting the website on your screen. Please include the program number when ordering.